Hello everybody, it's me, WalterTheGermanyBall, back with Console Conversations, and we're here with another episode where it's just me counting down, and today we're going to be doing a top 10 of my 10 favorite video game sequels out there. And after the last couple of episodes have been really long, I wanted to make a few more palatable short ones. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. No more talking. Well, obviously more talking, but no more just housekeeping. Alright, so my number 10, my 10th favorite video game sequel of all time is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Now, this game is just fantastic. Now, I am a fan of the original, although I'll admit it's heavily flawed and has some terrible stages. But Sonic the Hedgehog 2 really starts to feel like a Sonic game. It introduced a ton of awesome stuff. It's very stylish. It looks great. It sounds great. The music's awesome. The gameplay is fun. It's vibrant. It's just such an amazing game, and it improves upon everything from the first game in every way possible. There's not really anything else to say, but it's just a fantastic game that is probably one of the greatest Genesis games ever. And then we come to Crash Bandicoot 2, which is my number 9. And this is my favorite Crash game to date. It's just so fun, has such a great charm to it. It feels like a true adventure. Crash Bandicoot Warped, because of the different time periods, just kind of feels a little all over the place. Even though I still love the game, it just doesn't feel like it has such a great solitary theme to me. Whereas Crash Bandicoot 2 does feel like it has that solitary theme and charm, and each level feels just amazing. And with the remake, you really get that atmosphere. Not to mention, the level design strikes a perfect balance between the difficulties of all the other games, and there's a lot of great exploration too. 3 might be objectively better, but I'm going to say 2 is my favorite, and it is my 9th favorite sequel of all time. Number 8. My number 8 is Batman Arkham City. Now, I have barely talked about these games, but I do actually like them. I don't hate these games whatsoever. In fact, I like all of them. It's just, calling Batman Arkham Asylum a masterpiece is a little crazy to me. I personally don't think it is, and I prefer the Spider-Man series heavily. But I do still really enjoy Batman Arkham Asylum. But Batman Arkham City is an addicting, fun, meticulously designed game with an awesome story, an awesome soundtrack. It looks great. It feels great. Every mechanic is creative. The combat feels very fine-tuned. The bosses are some of the best in video game history. The villains are just great all around. And the ending is mind-blowing. It just takes everything that Arkham Asylum had going for it and makes a whole game out of it. And it's a great game, even though there are still some problems, like how 100%ing it is kind of insanity. And there are a few confusing parts, but it is still just sublime. And it's just one of the best sequels out there because it makes everything Asylum did wrong worth it in the end, and takes that formula and runs with it. And then number 7 is Streets of Rage 2. Now, I have reviewed this game, so I won't talk about it too much, but basically, looks better, sounds better, plays better than Streets of Rage 1, and it feels better. It feels more like a console game. It feels more like a Genesis game. It's truly one of the most iconic games of the era, and I don't blame anyone for loving it. Even though it's not my favorite, I still really love it. And if you didn't notice, the first song you'll hear in my video outro is from Streets of Rage 2. So I think I kind of like this game. It's just a great sequel, improves upon everything from Streets of Rage 1, and it's just so fun. Even if the enemy variety is a little bit bad, the stage variety mostly makes up for it. And it has an amazing soundtrack, of course. And at number 6, we have Pokemon Gold and Silver, which I talked about last time in my personal history of gaming timeline video. And this, I don't really want to beat the same topic, but I'll just say Pokemon Gold and Silver are charming, just like Crash Bandicoot 2. They're imprinted in my mind as having their own feel and their own ideas, and they are packed with content, and they look great, and they sound great, and it's just, they're so good, and they take everything that I love about Pokemon, the creative designs, the great level design, the great combat, which sadly is quite simple, but for the time it was great. Here, it's just packed to the brim with awesome stuff to do, awesome areas to explore, and that's really why I like Pokemon. And this was one of those games that really just convinced me to love the Pokemon series, and it's just so good, and it's a great sequel, taking pretty much all of the first game and somehow fitting it into just the post-game. So yeah, it's pretty dang good. Number 5 goes to Ratchet and Clank Going Commando. Now this is an interesting one. I actually have not beaten this game fully, but oh my god is it good. Everything about this game, from the humor to the music to the level design to the combat, is so fun and addicting. You will find yourself just playing through this whole game, and it's very long as well. I remember constantly thinking, oh, this must be the last level. Nope, there's a whole nother giant chunk of the game left, and it's awesome. It's really just that fun and addicting, and there's a lot of content. There's a lot of stuff to do. It takes everything from the first Ratchet & Clank, like I've said about a lot of these, it takes everything from the first one and just amps it up, just uses it to make new mechanics, new enemies, and it is certainly one of the funniest games I have ever played in my entire life. There are some terrible boss battles, that are just abysmal, but besides that, this is just a masterpiece, and I love it so much. And speaking of classic masterpieces with okay boss battles, Mario Bros. 3, everybody. Now, I've kind of broken my rule with this. If you've noticed that everything on this list so far has been a direct sequel, a number 2, because that would be a little bit off the rails if I could just pick any sequel to any game. But this does count as the direct sequel to Mario Brothers, in my opinion, because Lost Levels is not real, and Mario 2 is also not real. Those two just don't exist. Just let me have this, okay? Mario 3 is very fun, very well designed, and very difficult. It is a very hard game, but oh my god, is it worth it. If you can overcome a lot of the challenging stuff about this, and just look at the level design, the enemy designs, how creative it is, how good it looks, how the soundtrack is so amazing. Just everything about this oozes the charm of the NES, and I probably would say it's my favorite NES game ever. It's so undeniably fun, and it's so wacky and weird. It reminds you of the time back when every Mario game was completely different from one another, and this is truly the essence of that. Tons of new enemies, tons of new locations, just an insanely creative game, and that's why I really love it. Not only is the design great, not only does it encompass everything I love about the NES, but it truly stands on its own as a solid and completely different game that doesn't conform to the rest of the series. And speaking of a solid, unique game, Spyro 2 Ricto's Rage is at number 3. Because this is seriously one of my favorite games ever. I love the first game more, but this is seriously great as a sequel. It adds a ton of new character, it adds a ton of new charm, it adds a ton of new levels, a ton of things to do in each level instead of just getting 3 collectibles. The levels are much bigger, much more fleshed out. Each of them has an opening cutscene that's like a cartoon, and they're hilarious. The challenges encompass different abilities that you unlock throughout the game. The villain is way better. The boss fights are amazing. The graphics are great. The music is even better than the original if you're looking at it objectively. It's just so good as a sequel. It tried to do everything so much better than the first game. And even though I still prefer the original, I gotta admit that in many respects this is better. I don't think it's better overall because some of these challenges are abysmal, like the Alchemist. but a lot of them are great and add a lot of replay value to these stages. And there's the perfect amount of backtracking that makes it feel like a real adventure without making it super frustrating. So it's a great game in terms of how it's balanced as well. And then we have number 2, which is Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. I know, haha, Among Thieves, Among Us, yeah. Well, guess what? This is even better than Among Us, I'm gonna say. Because this is, and if I hadn't played a few other games, this would have been my 10th favorite game of all time. Uncharted 2 is sublime. Uncharted 4 might be my favorite so far, but it's not a direct sequel, so see, I'm still sticking to that rule. Uncharted 2 is great, but not because of what others would like you to think. It's great in terms of the story. The story is great, the mystery of it is great, the characters are great, the graphics are great, the music is great, all that's great, and everyone will say that. But it's also great because of the shooting. And the shooting in Uncharted 4 is amazing. And I've heard a lot of people say, you don't play Uncharted for the shooting, you play it just for the story and the visuals and all that. And I agree that some people may do that, especially with the third game, which I'm not the hugest fan of because there's not enough game in it for me. But Uncharted 2 has game. Oh yeah, it has game all over the place. One of my favorite things about it is how you have to constantly switch up weapons, just move all around. You're not just sitting there shooting at the same guy over and over until eventually you kill him like a lot of boring cover-based shooters. No, you're jumping around, going all over the place, switching from weapon to weapon, ducking down, rolling around, punching people, just doing all kinds of crazy stuff to move around so you don't get killed. And you're constantly on the edge. The difficulty can go way up, but it's never crazy like it is in the first game. It's always really good. The difficulty is always really good, and it makes sure that you're stressed out beyond belief. And at number 1, we have a game that does that incredibly well, too, which is The Last of Us Part 2. You knew it was gonna be The Last of Us 2. If you know me, you knew this would be my number 1. Yes. I love this game, partly because the story is the best ever told, fight me. The visuals are probably the best, or at least close to the best I've ever seen. The music's amazing, the voice acting's amazing, the mechanics are satisfying as all hell, and the gameplay is stressful beyond belief. The survival horror gameplay is fantastic. You never know what's going to happen next. Speaking of moving around, switching up tactics and weapons, you constantly have to do that. And in this game, you're punished very severely by dying, by having to watch these brutal murders. And it's just so disheartening to lose, but you still keep going. The difficulty in this is probably some of the best I've ever seen. I'm not going to talk about it that much, because I made a 33-minute review on it, and I made a 20-minute review on it a year ago. So you don't need to hear me gush about this any longer. Just play it. It's my favorite sequel of all time. Uncharted 2 is my second. Then Spyro 2, then Mario Bros. 3, then Ratchet and Clank Going Commando, then Pokemon Gold and Silver, then Streets of Rage 2, then Batman Arkham City, Crash 2, and Sonic the Hedgehog. And there you go. So there you have my 10 favorite video game sequels of all time. Now, thank you guys for watching. Be safe, don't watch the squeakquel, and goodbye.